A good Sunday morning, everybody. This is meteorologist Alexa Trischler broadcasting from our WWL-TV news studio in New Orleans, Louisiana, bringing you the latest update on Tropical Depression 10. It is forecast to become Tropical Storm Idalia sometime later today, just barely hanging on to tropical depression status at winds at 35 miles per hour and gusts at 45 miles per hour. So it is soon to become our next tropical storm, which would be named Idalia sometime later today. And it is barely moving. It is just kind of drifting along in the Yucatan Channel. Movement is east at 2 miles per hour. It is located 80 miles southeast of Cozumel, Mexico. So right between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba. You can kind of see it's sort of an ill-defined look, not your characteristic fully formed structured tropical cyclone just yet, but it is getting really close. All the storms are still kind of firing up on the eastern side and the southeastern side, and there's that small center located just to the east of the Yucatan Peninsula right now. And it is producing quite a bit of heavy rain to parts of western Cuba and parts of the eastern Yucatan Peninsula. So as we go throughout the course of the next day, it will likely strengthen to the tropical storm once it gets into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Heading into Tuesday, it will likely strengthen to a Category 1 hurricane and continue its strength as a Category 1 most likely before it moves into the Big Bend of Florida. But right now, the cone of uncertainty kind of stretches from Tampa Bay all the way west to Panama City Beach. So there's still that spread on where the exact eye will go. But of course, it's always important to remember that impacts can be felt outside that cone. So there's still a lot of uncertainty as to where exactly this is going to go and how intense it is going to go, or how intense it is going to be. But if you live along the western peninsula of Florida, from Tampa Bay all the way through the Gulf Coast, stretching to Apalachicola, Panama City Beach, it's kind of important to get your plan in place now, know what you're going to do as the storm evolves and we get a better idea of what's going to happen. So Florida is really the spot that this is heading. It's been consistent over the last few days that this tropical depression will be moving towards Florida, most likely the Big Bend. Right now, tropical watches and warnings are in effect for western Cuba, the Isle of Youth, and the eastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula right now, because that is where it's located, and it's really going to kind of drift there over the next 36 hours or so. It's not going to move much until we get into the work week. Probably Tuesday is when we'll start to see that strengthening. At least that's what the Euro has been indicating for days now. Really, the models have been pretty consistent in terms of the Euro's outlook on what's going to happen. So we see this is Tuesday around 7 o'clock. We get into Tuesday evening. All right, now we're strengthening into possibly a Category 1 hurricane and then making landfall. Again, this is just a Euro output, one scenario of what can happen. This is not a guaranteed forecast just yet. Things will keep changing, especially as we get more data from the Tropical Depression 10 right now. Hurricane hunters are getting that information now. It will become easier to track once we get that information into the models. But right now, our PrecisionCast European model shows early Wednesday. So sometime late Tuesday, early Wednesday, this system can be making landfall into the Big Bend region of Florida, maybe giving us impacts all along the nature coast of Florida, even stretching down into Tampa Bay. So it really depends on how things evolve. Of course, the right side of a hurricane always gives the highest wind impact, highest rain impact, and highest storm surge impact. So anywhere from Tampa Bay all the way to Panama City Beach, it's really important to stay tuned to the forecast because this is certainly going to change each subsequent run going forward. But as I mentioned, the Euro has stayed pretty consistent that this is going to move towards the Big Bend by early Wednesday and then eventually into South Georgia and then the Carolinas heading into Thursday and Friday, and then it will move offshore. So that's the Euro. Now let's take a look at the GFS. Kind of a similar projection where we get into Tuesday. We strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane most likely. We have to closely monitor. Of course, the Gulf is incredibly warm. We have to keep a close eye on this system to see, is it possible that it intensifies even more? Who's to say right now, but so far the GFS and the Euro are kind of in this good agreement that the Big Bend is where this is going to move early Wednesday morning. Again, the timing has to be refined. The exact location and the intensity will continue to be refined every subsequent forecast going forward. And then continuing on into Thursday and Friday, moving into Georgia and eventually the Carolinas as a tropical storm. So it will weaken once it moves onshore and inland rather, but still bringing possible tropical storm impacts to the southeastern United States. And the reason it's not really moving right now, it kind of has no steering currents, but high pressure to its east is going to start to direct it north slowly. But then there's this trough that's going to dip down into the eastern U.S. and it will kind of take this system off to the north and to the east. And that's basically what we're going to see in terms of its movement going into this work week. Honestly, the spaghetti models where we look at, consensus on different computer models on where this is going to go has stayed pretty consistent in terms of it moving into the Big Bend. Maybe the Nature Coast, maybe a little bit on the western Big Bend, closer to Apalachicola, possibly a little bit to the east along Taylor County, Florida, Cedar Key. It's kind of going to take, the next 24, 48 hours to really get those details better fine-tuned to see exactly where it's going to go. But if you live along the Gulf Coast of Florida, now's a good time to review your plans, know what you're going to do. If you're susceptible to flooding, if you live along the coast and hey, we get flooding, this is going to be, something that we have to worry about, just kind of keep your plans in mind, stay abreast of the forecast, because we can certainly see some heavy rain from this and some gusty winds along the Gulf Coast of Florida, anywhere from Panama City Beach down to Tampa Bay, and maybe even some surge. And rainfall accumulations right now could be anywhere from 5 to 6 inches. And this is just over the next 5 days from now until September 1st. So basically how this system is going to play out, looks like the heftiest rainfall amounts will be through the Big Bend and stretching northward through Georgia into the Carolinas. In the central Gulf Coast and southeastern Louisiana and South Mississippi, we're not really expecting any real impacts from this. We are going to get some good rain in the central part of the Gulf Coast, New Orleans Metro, southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, from a weak front that's going to push in. So yes, we will have some higher rain chances reflected here in this rainfall accumulation map, but it's not really going to be from this system. Yeah, we'll get some more moisture from it along the central Gulf Coast, but this front coming in is going to be what prompts the showers and storms for us here locally in the central Gulf Coast. Besides Idalia, which might have just strengthened to a tropical storm. From the latest National Hurricane Center update, it basically said any moment now it's going to strengthen. So let's see if the latest it is. It is now Tropical Storm Idalia. So it has just been updated within the last 60 seconds. Tropical Depression 10 is now Tropical Storm Idalia. So I'll actually read you the latest from the National Hurricane Center just since it just came in. So from 10:15 Central Daylight Time from the National Hurricane Center, depression strengthens to a tropical storm. Observations from a NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft indicate that Tropical Depression 10 has strengthened into Tropical Storm Idalia. The maximum winds are estimated to be 40 miles per hour with higher gusts. So there you have it. Idalia, our eye storm, is on the map. And really, the cone that is going to remain the same as with the latest update, just because it became now Tropical Storm Idalia. The cone hasn't changed from what we just went over. So still expecting it to strengthen to a Category 1 hurricane sometime on Tuesday and eventually make landfall somewhere in the region of the Big Bend of Florida. Going into the afternoon hours today, we'll get the latest update on the forecast cone. So make sure you are checking back later today when the forecast cone becomes updated once again. So everything we just went through is the latest. It's just now Tropical Storm Idalia. It has strengthened to a tropical storm. But elsewhere out in the tropics, we do have Hurricane Franklin, now a Category 2. It is still going to strengthen, possibly to a Category 4 in the next couple of days as it stays out in the open ocean, but it is going to move ever so close to Bermuda. So Bermuda really has to watch Franklin closely going into the next few days as it strengthens to a major hurricane. But it's going to hook off to the north and to the east and move out into the open ocean going into the second half of this week. Couple other areas to watch in the couple other areas to watch, I should say, in the central Atlantic Ocean. One area has emerged off of Africa. It's kind of just a blob of moisture that we'll be watching, but it looks like it's going to fizzle out and stay in the open ocean. And then you notice this little X out in the central Atlantic Ocean, that is fizzling out as well. So those other spots out there, don't have to worry about those. It's just Franklin will be possibly an issue for Bermuda heading into this week. But all eyes are on Idalia, which is now our next named storm that we are going to be tracking as we head throughout the rest of today and early this week, since, yes, the forecast is going to change. But again, what to expect here in southeastern Louisiana and South Mississippi here at home, really little to no impacts are anticipated. Maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, it gets a little breezy along the immediate coastline. Maybe we get some larger swells out in the Gulf waters, some choppy water possible. So really just for mariners, something to keep in mind. Tuesday, Wednesday, it gets a little breezy. Maybe the water gets a little choppy from this Idalia moving to the northeast towards Florida's Big Bend coastline. And possibly with that cone kind of going back and forth going forward, we'll be able to refine where is this cone really going to be pointing. So I would say Big Bend, Florida, from Panama City down to Tampa Bay, that is the best bet to see impacts from this system. Just make sure you're staying tuned for the latest forecasts. As we go throughout the afternoon, we will provide more updates on what's going on with Idalia and what's going on with the rest of the tropics. So make sure you're checking back today, and you most certainly check back in the next couple days so you know exactly what's going to happen. So thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. Hopefully you will be able to stay safe if you're in the area of the cone, and make sure you have those plans in order.